Hi, I'm Sarah Sharp. I'm a deal attorney who helps people buy and sell businesses every day. And I am going to tell you the secret weapon to closing more business deals. I'm the founder of Deal Academy, and I'm a lawyer, and I primarily help people buy and sell accounting practices, but I have experience in all industries. So with that in mind, I see a lot of deal flow, and I see a lot of deals not go through. Here are some of the things that you can do to make sure that you don't waste a bunch of money on a lawyer for a deal that's gonna die. The main thing is to be a nice and honest person. So if you are looking to buy or sell a business, especially in my field where it's professional services, it does not behoove anyone to pull one over on the other guy, because that person has to convince their clients to go over with you if they're the seller, and has to service the clients if they're the buyer. And they're not gonna be able to pay you any amount of money if they're not making any money. And if it goes too poorly, they might sue you. So there's no gotchas that work out too good in this space. You really want to have open and honest dialogue, and just don't pursue a deal with somebody who you're not aligned with and you don't agree to and understand the deal terms. That sounds really, really obvious, but it is unbelievably uncommon to find people who prioritize just an honest understanding of the deal terms, absent any kind of different gotchas or clever lawyering or chest beating of lawyers who will gladly tell me that in their 50 years of practice they've never seen X or Y. So you don't want any of that. You want a collaborative attorney. You want to include the other party on anything that's coming up. And as a big part of this, you want to seriously spend dedicated time every single week, if you can, really thinking about what your counterparty is experiencing. I know that there's a word for that. It's called empathy. So the number one secret weapon to making sure your deals go through is empathy. So I know it's a little bit of a bad word, and maybe, card shark deal doers feel like that's not got any place in what they're doing. It absolutely does. If you want your deal to go through, you want to think about what the other side's going through, right? So that can bridge so many gaps. For instance, I have a deal where the buyer stopped responding and turns out was in a car accident. If that happens, you want to make sure that you're empathetic to the situation. So when you see somebody starting to ghost you, very easy to get defensive and say, where are you? I'm missing my chance to sell my business. This means a lot to me. But think about what's going through them. Don't assume anything about their intent until you know for sure. So a way that this pans out a lot is lawyers. So we'll go over agreements with my clients, and I can tell that my clients are starting to get agitated and frustrated at the other side for some of the changes. Because, if I'm the buyer, for instance, I wrote these agreements. I, have a little bit of pride of authorship. I get it. But usually I went over them with a client and we put the stuff that's in there on purpose. And so it can feel a little bit critical and unpleasant to have somebody fully reject something that you thoughtfully prepared. That is normal, but it's also a normal part of the process to change it, to make it better, to kind of press and see what, can be given to get yourself a little bit better terms. More significantly, it is incredibly likely that the changes that we're looking at are from the lawyer and the client doesn't even know what they mean. So until we know for sure, I always say, let's just assume it's the lawyer and the client, is not the one putting together these changes or doing anything that would, scuttle the deal or make anything take longer or be more expensive. So that is one way to demonstrate empathy. If you are buying a firm, it is very easy to get wrapped up in your process because you think, I've been working on this deal. I've been looking for a deal for years, maybe, or months at least. I've sunk money into paying a lawyer for this deal. I have really, committed a lot to it. And you get a little bit wrapped up in the part of the process that is yours. But I think it's really important as a buyer to take a bigger perspective and remember that this is often the life's work of the seller, that you've been working on this deal for a couple months and they've been, running this business for years. Sometimes it was a family business. So it is a lot to them. The clients are their friends. The clients are like family to them often. The employees are like family to them often. So there's going to be an enormous level of sensitivity on certain deal terms. Like you might think it's totally reasonable that you don't want to, commit one way or another to providing a certain level of benefits until you get in and start running the business. But, if that's somebody that your seller has worked with for 40 years and the seller knows that the employee is dealing with a husband who has cancer cancer or something like that, they're really going to care about the benefits and they're going to want that ironed out before they'll even commit to the deal. And that's good, right? You want to buy a business from somebody who cares about their employees and is doing what's best for them and not just in it to make a quick buck. So empathy means to me that you consider the other person's perspective. Indemnification is a very easy example. We usually want people to protect us if something bad happens on their running of the business. If I get drug in after closing and I'm the seller, I want the buyer to indemnify me. If I'm the buyer and I get drug in for something that happened well before closing, I want the seller to indemnify me. Normal, very reasonable. But that feeling of understanding really starts to break apart when you start talking about fundamental representation, and you can start to interpret it that the seller won't even promise that they currently own the business. But that's not true. What usually is happening is they're feeling nervous that they're going to make an overly broad promise and hurt their legacy or their ability to retire because they might accidentally have a foot fault and a technical breach of contract. So as long as you assume the best and really empathize with where you are, similarly, sellers have to realize buyers are stepping into something completely blind. So if you're, thinking, well, the buyer doesn't know what they're doing, the buyer doesn't appreciate why I am asking X or Y, they're just wanting to come in and change everything. And they haven't been through what you've been through. And if you're the seller, you really got to think about what you were like 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And you probably would disagree with the way you were doing things. And that's you being the same person. So of course, different people are going to have different approaches and they should be allowed to. They're doing things the way they think are best, just like you did. If you consistently reorient to a place of empathy in your transaction, and instead of going headlong into, I have to get this, I need this caveat, this retention adjustment protects me. If you just take the moment to say, I understand where you're coming from, because from your perspective, you're worried that you're going to be on the hook for something that you have no control over because I'm buying the business and I'm running it. And, if some money is subject to retention adjustment, you can't control those clients anymore. And so, you're feeling like you shouldn't be on the hook for the way I run the business. But here's the deal. I need to make sure that you're going to help me by making sure that the clients transition, because from my perspective, I could set foot in this business and figure out that all the clients have left and you didn't tell me, or find you making phone calls to everyone to say, go with Joe. Actually, my cousin, he's in town and he'll be great. I already got paid for this company anyways. And then I, buyer, am on the hook paying an SBA loan for 10 years. If you really just spend some time on each sticking point and try to make the argument, even write it down or have AI make you the argument for the other side, you will find that you can actually close your deals, and it's a lot more pleasant because you'll learn some things about yourself and your deal partner along the way. I'm Sarah Sharp. If you found this valuable or helpful, please check out my platform for courses, dealacademy.org, and like and subscribe if you like the content.